Welcome to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. I'm Christian of Standing Stones Healing, founder of the Reiki Business Collective and creator of the Build Your Reiki Business program, sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business. Greetings, welcome, and thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. I'm Christian of Standing Stones Healing, and I am truly excited and honored to have you here. So thanks so much for tuning in. In this week's episode, we're talking about teaching Reiki in your Reiki business. But first, if you tuned in the past couple of weeks, you know that I encouraged you to please mark off your calendar for November 23rd and 24th. And I want to encourage you to now please mark off your calendar for November 22nd through November the 25th, because indeed that weekend, that long weekend, we have coming up the world's first online Reiki Business Summit on Zoom. I am super excited to welcome you to join us. You can learn all about the summit and save your spot at standingstoneshealing.com/summit. We have a great lineup of speakers, industry leaders talking about Reiki business topics, lots of opportunities for discussions with Reiki business owners, and opportunities for informal networking. It's going to be an amazing weekend. I do hope that you will join us. The link to learn more and register is down below. And don't delay to make sure that you get in on the special early bird pricing. Your jaw will drop when you see what the registration fee is as an early bird. I would also like to announce that the Distance Reiki Business Builder program is available for enrollment. If you are interested in building a distance Reiki business, you can start right now at standingstoneshealing.com/distancebiz. Yes, that link is down below as well. And finally, if you would love to join us for the full Build Your Reiki Business program, it is again open for enrollment. Now, I will say that this is the world's most comprehensive Reiki business program, and it includes the Distance Reiki Business Builder as a bonus. And so this program is so comprehensive that the full Distance Reiki Business Builder program for building a distance Reiki business is merely a bonus. Learn more and join right now at standingstoneshealing.com/build. Thank you so much for allowing me to share those announcements with you. And now on to talking about teaching Reiki. For me, on my Reiki business journey, I did not start off teaching Reiki. It actually took me a few years until I decided to teach Reiki. Now, when I commenced my Reiki training, it was for my own personal and spiritual development. I never expected to have a Reiki business, and so when I took Reiki training, it was not in order to start a Reiki business. It was for my own self. And so when I started my Reiki business, even though I had taken up to level 3 by that time, I had no plans to teach Reiki. So as I was seeing clients and clients were asking me, "Oh, can you teach me how to do this?" my answer was simply, "No, I don't teach Reiki." And I was very hesitant to start teaching Reiki, not because of the teaching aspect. I have a background in teaching. I have a lot of years of experience of teaching, a lot of experience creating workshops and course curriculum. I have a background as both an English and business university professor, so I'm no stranger to teaching, and I was not worried about the teaching at all. As a matter of fact, I love teaching. It's something that I enjoy and something I have done for years. And so my hesitation at teaching Reiki had nothing to do about the teaching. My hesitation at teaching Reiki also had nothing to do with my level of knowledge. Of course, I firmly believe that the learning in our Reiki journey doesn't stop with our training. It merely begins with our training, and that it's important for us to continue to learn and dive deeper into the topics and into Reiki throughout our Reiki journey. And so that the training itself is not the end all be all on our Reiki learning, and that's really just the beginning of our Reiki learning. And so I had learned plenty throughout my years after my training, and was deepening my own understanding and knowledge of Reiki. So it wasn't about my feelings of being inadequately prepared to teach and not having the knowledge, and it certainly wasn't about my ability to teach. What was at the center of my hesitancy to teach Reiki was my belief that a Reiki teacher should be available to their students for life. And so my belief that a teacher should be available to a student anytime they have questions, anytime they have concerns, years and years down the road, to be able to reach out. And quite frankly, I wasn't so sure how I felt about that commitment. To me, the rest of my life seemed like a really long time, and I had some concerns about that, what I believed was a real heart kind of commitment that I wanted to give to my students. I think eventually I just came to a point where it was kind of like, buddy, get over yourself. To be able to say, if you have a student who reaches out to you years down the road, I was picturing myself being like 85 years old and my phone rings and it's one of my past students with a question, and me thinking, at 85 years old, 90, 100 years old, my plan is to live to 100, by the way, to have students calling me up and asking questions. And I'm like, what? I'm still answering Reiki questions. For some reason, for me, that just seemed like such a long time to be invested in a student, especially as a university professor where I'd have a student for a semester and then that would be that for the student. Even though, of course, I would still have students reach out to me after class. So I really had to kind of just get over that hang up and say, you know what? If a student does reach out to me when I'm 90 years old, so what? Why is that such a big deal? And why is that such a bad thing? And so I believe really it was a sense of fear of that kind of lifelong commitment that kept me from devoting myself to teaching Reiki. And now, of course, that I do teach Reiki and have been teaching Reiki for years, I actually wish my students would reach out to me more. I wouldn't mind if my past students contacted me just to say hi. And so funny how things turn out in that regard, isn't it? But so it took me some time to get over that resistance to teaching. And so I did not teach for a few years on my Reiki business journey, even though I for sure could in many senses of the ability. But for any of us who are feeling hesitant about teaching and about offering our experience of Reiki to students, sharing it with students, and teaching them Reiki, I have some encouragement for you, some things that I would really like to pass along in my experience as a Reiki teacher and as a teacher of all kinds of topics and subjects. The first thing I would really like to encourage you with is that your students believe in you. When students sign up to take your Reiki courses, it's because they believe in you. On some level, they believe in you. Whether they've had a session with you or they have interacted with you, maybe they have checked out your content, your posts, your videos, your podcast, whatever you might have online. But there's something in them that has made them say, I want to learn from this person. There is something in them that says, I believe that this person can teach me. I believe that I want to learn from this person. And so when a student signs up for your class, they are in effect saying, I believe in you. I trust you, and I believe that you can teach me what I need to know in order to be a Reiki practitioner. Of course, no matter what level that is. And so I think it's very important for us to not take for granted when someone signs up for our classes that doing so signals that they believe in us. And so even as we might have fears and concerns about teaching, even as we might feel feelings of imposter syndrome or who am I to teach Reiki? You know, there are so many Reiki teachers. There are so many people who know so much more than I do. There are so many people who are such better teachers. Who am I to teach Reiki? Who am I to pass along this knowledge? Who am I to help someone along their Reiki journey as their Reiki teacher? And when someone signs up for your course, they're signaling that they believe in you. They believe that you are able to teach, that you are qualified. They do trust you to be able to teach them what they need to know in order to be a Reiki practitioner. So I want to encourage us to lean into that trust, to not take it for granted, to celebrate it, and to recognize that even while we may not believe in ourselves as Reiki teachers, indeed, people do. And the people who sign up for our classes surely do believe in us. When our students are taking classes from us, they are cheering us on. They want us to succeed. So no one is signing up for your course and saying, man, I really hope this sucks and this teacher fails. They are saying, I believe in this teacher. I want them to do a good job. I want them to succeed. And they are, in effect, cheering you on. And so as you are teaching, whether you are teaching in person or online, as you are in front of that class, as you are offering the lessons, I want to encourage you to know that inside of themselves, the students are cheering you on. You have a class of supporters. You have a room of supporters. These are people who have invested in you, including so very often with their hard-earned money. And they want you to do well. They believe that you can do well, and they are silently cheering you on and supporting you in that class. So know that as you might be nervous as you are teaching, you might be afraid, know that they are a friendly group because just by signing up, they have signaled that they believe in you. So as you feel the nerves of teaching, of course, take some deep breaths, call upon Reiki, practice self-Reiki to help calm yourself down. But know that this is a friendly environment because they have signed up to take the class from you because they believe in you and they want you to do well. They want you to succeed. They wouldn't be there if they didn't. As far as the teaching of a Reiki course itself, there's a lot that goes into it in terms of the organization and how to organize it. And so when we talk about organizing a Reiki class, one of the ways that we really conceptualize the organization is that class structure. How are you teaching the class? Do you want to teach it in that very common weekend warrior, quote unquote, weekend warrior model where you are offering the class live, maybe 2 days back to back, full days, depending upon the level and the even number of students. But what kind of structure do you want to teach in? Now, for me and my Reiki business, I currently teach a class structure that is not the weekend type. I've actually never taught that class structure because it has never sat well with me. It's not how I learned Reiki. And so often the way that we teach things is how we learned things. And so often we will teach someone how to do something based on the way that we learned how to do it. For instance, if I was teaching you how to tie your shoes, I would teach you how to do it the way that I do it. And so it's very common in our Reiki practice that how we teach Reiki is how we were taught Reiki. And so many of us were taught in this weekend warrior kind of model. And so therefore many of us just naturally, or maybe even not so naturally, adopt it. We think it's natural, but it's cultural because it's how it was introduced to us. And so we therefore adopt it just because that's the way that we learned. We, of course, don't have to teach in that way, and I believe it's important for us to teach in the ways that resonate with us and that feel right to us. And so what that means is that if that weekend warrior model doesn't resonate with us, if it doesn't feel right to us, then you don't have to keep doing it. Now, there are some Reiki practitioners and especially Reiki teachers who really believe that we need to do things the way that we were taught to do them, that we need to strictly observe and preserve all of the teachings the way in which we were taught them, that we need to pass down the same manual that our teachers used, that we need to do things exactly the way that they have been done. But I will say, personally, quite frankly, I don't agree with that. I can absolutely see why and the reasoning behind it. But for me in my Reiki journey, as I mentioned, the learning doesn't stop after our Reiki training. And if we're using all of the same manuals, the same practices, the same methods that our teachers used, what we're in effect saying is that we haven't evolved after our training. We haven't learned new things or enhanced our knowledge that we might want to include in the training. We haven't maybe decided that we have a better resonance with a different kind of class structure than that weekend model. And I think it's important for us to honor our own learning, our own evolution in our Reiki journey, and the fact that we just might want to do things differently from the ways our teachers did them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think rather that is an evolution of our own experience and our own knowledge base and indeed an increase in the depth of our own Reiki practice. I know that in my Reiki courses, I currently teach only Reiki 1. And I know that in that course, I teach a lot more than my teachers did. Now, I had excellent teachers. I had the same 2 teachers for all 3 levels, and I had excellent teachers. And my learning has evolved since my Reiki training. My knowledge has increased, my depth of practice has increased, and therefore I believe my teaching should increase. The depth of my teaching should increase. And so in my Reiki 1, I teach a lot more than my Reiki 1 training included. And so I think that indeed it is very helpful for us to enhance the trainings that we learned, that we had from our teachers, and to know that it's okay to do some things differently from the way our teachers did it, including with that class structure. So for me, I've never done the weekend warrior thing. Even when I taught all of my classes live, I spaced them out over multiple sessions rather than 1 or 2 long sessions. And in my Reiki business right now, because my Reiki business has shifted over the years, I don't currently teach Reiki in person. And I only teach level 1. And I do this as a self-paced online course that includes one-on-one Q&A, discussion, attunement, and post 21 days follow-up with me. So my Reiki 1 course structure right now is an online course that is very much a one-on-one mentorship with self-paced trainings. Another consideration for us in teaching Reiki is those manuals, that question of the manuals. And do we create our own manual? And there is some disagreement about this in the Reiki community. Like I mentioned previously, should you create your own manuals? Should you use the ones that your teacher gave you? But I know for me, in my Reiki training, I did not have extensive manuals. It was very much more a hands-on, oral kind of discussion. We also needed to read some supplemental books for the course that were not quote-unquote manuals. But the truth is that you can teach Reiki without a manual. There is no requirement to have a manual to teach Reiki, and people can learn Reiki without a manual. And my question is, if we have a purely printed manual and we have a blind student, then what good does that manual do for that student anyway? And do we say to that student, oh, well, I'm sorry, you can't learn Reiki because you can't read the manual? Of course, that's ridiculous. And so if we want to get technical about it, we don't even need manuals. Now, there are some teachers who will write manuals that are very, very extensive. And absolutely, I encourage you to do what resonates with you and what feels right to you when it comes to the manual. And my own Reiki 1 manual is not extensive. It hits the highlights. It, of course, brings in things that were not part of my Reiki 1 training, but it is by no means an extensive manual. And so if you are thinking, oh, I would love to teach, but I'm really hung up on that manual creation part, that was honestly a part of it for me too. You know, not just the lifelong commitment thing, but also that, oh, I've got to create a manual because the manual that I had really wasn't a quote-unquote manual in my Reiki 1 training. But again, with a background in teaching and having created so many course materials in the past, so much course curriculum, this wasn't nearly as big of a deal for me as it might be for someone else listening in and saying, I would love to teach Reiki, but I'm afraid of that manual part. I really want to encourage you that many of your students, after the course, are not even going to look at the manual again. Oh, yes, I said that. And let's be real. How many of us look at our manuals over and over and over again that we received in our Reiki training? Some of us may not even have our manuals anymore. We may have very well lost them. As long as we are passing along the information that students need and encouraging them that the Reiki training is really where the exploration and the learning begin, I don't believe that we need to have extensive manuals. Now, I will say there are manuals that are for sale, and you can buy manuals rather than creating your own. But I really want to encourage you on this, that I believe it's much more effective to create our own manuals based upon our experience, our knowledge, our learning, and even, like I said, a deeper understanding and learning and knowledge and experience than in the manual that we were given in our Reiki training. I also want to say, please, there is a set of manuals out there that is available for sale. These manuals are what is known as resale rights, or they may also be called white label. This is where you buy the manuals, all levels, 1, 2, 3. You purchase the manuals, and then you are able to pass them off as your own. You are able to affix your logos, your branding, and you also acquire the resale rights to be able to then sell these manuals to others for them to do the same thing, to affix their own branding or resell them to others. These manuals are very common, they are low cost, and they're terrible. I have read these manuals. I do not recommend them. And as a matter of fact, everyone, because they're so ubiquitous, because they are so low cost, and you can find them very easily for sale anywhere, someone tuning in probably indeed has them, uses them, has bought them, and even sells them. They're available online for free. You can actually find them for free and not even have to pay for them. So I've read them, and I'm sorry, I don't recommend them. I do not think they are good manuals, and I think that they do perpetuate a lot of falsehoods. And so it's unfortunate that these manuals are so accessible and so ubiquitous, because they just keep being reused, and they're frankly not very good. And so on our Reiki teaching journey, I really want to encourage us that yes, it is okay to do things a little differently. It is okay to add things to the training, as long, of course, as it's based on experience. So the sharing of experience and making sure to tell students, that your experience may differ from another practitioner's, but that this is your experience. To, of course, increasingly share more information about the real roots of Reiki and the Japanese practices of Reiki, I think is very important, so that we can honor those practices while at the same time including our own experience and indeed including our own approaches with the practice and with the training too. I think that we can indeed honor a practice while including our own personalization in that practice. when we make sure to acknowledge that this is something that we are doing as part of our own personal practice and not telling students that it's the way it should be done and that they should be doing it in this particular way. Now, of course, there's so much to say about teaching Reiki, but what are your tips for teaching Reiki? What is encouragement that you want to pass along to practitioners who may be considering teaching Reiki, but who are feeling nervous about it? Drop it down below for us if you're on YouTube. Let us know, and stop into the Reiki Business Collective and share it with us at facebook.com/groups/Reiki Biz. Sending so many blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business. Thanks for tuning in to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, and send to a friend. Learn more about the Build Your Reiki Business program at standingstoneshealing.com/build. Sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business.